Hey everybody, welcome to the podcast. Today we are diving into a detailed look at what living an extraordinary life looks like on the day-to-day. The majority of your life and ours is spent in daily activities that can be mundane. Dishes, laundry, errands, even with a travel lifestyle like ours, we spend most of our time sitting in a vehicle on a road trip or waiting in an airport. How do you make the ordinary, routine, boring daily interactions more meaningful and purpose-filled? We will share specific strategies that we've used for over a decade to turn the transactional into transformational. If you've ever felt that life is like the movie Groundhog Day, which we're watching tonight, then you definitely want to listen to this episode so you can learn how to get unstuck and make the daily interactions that you're already having with your spouse and children more special, memorable, and magical. This episode is sponsored by our Be Your Best Self bundle. The strength of your family begins with the strength of the foundation, and that's you. You are the foundation of your family, and you have to be strong to carry the load of responsibility. The Best Self bundle will lighten the burden with tools that help you do and be more with less stress and more confidence. Greg loves to teach that a rising tide lifts all boats. When the tide comes in, it lifts all the boats in the harbor. You can be the tide in your family. Family life gets better when you get better. How you live your life is how you teach your children to live their life. Be someone worth modeling. Go to extraordinaryfamilylife.com to get access to the Best Self bundle.
Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of the Extraordinary Family Life Podcast. Today we are going to talk about living an extraordinary family life. This one feels so important, so poignant, so real. I think perhaps it's a safe assumption to say that most people want to live a happy life. Unfortunately, I also think it's a safe assumption to say that most people ultimately don't end up living the happy, fulfilled life. I would venture to say there are more disappointments than fulfillments. And there's this existential thing where we want to be happy, we want to be fulfilled, we want to live a meaningful life. We want to know that we actually really truly lived, that what we did mattered, and that we loved and were loved, and that our life was full and fulfilling and meaningful and special, and we want to feel good about it. Really, that's the entire message today as we dive into this. Of like, how do you make this? What is life? For one, I know this is kind of an existential question here.
What is life?
What is life? But when we frame this up, I hope it'll be insightful where you're like, oh yeah, like some things will click like they did for us. They kind of fit together, and then you realize, okay, how do I take that, once I define what life is, how do I take that and make it really good?
Well, because I think one of the things you're talking about when you're saying most people end up not living the fulfilling, meaningful life they wanted to is we're not just talking about like end result, like in the end, oh, it's over, my life was fulfilling. It's ultimately the day-to-day, and I would say moment-to-moment emotions that you're feeling most of the time. Like that is where most people are failing when they say they want to live a happy life, and yet they spend most of their time feeling emotions that are
not happy.
And honestly, I personally don't necessarily like having happy as the standard,
right?
Because I think there are things that are even more important than happiness, like fulfillment or a sense of accomplishment even, which may or may not equate with happiness. Happiness can be a part of that, but to even live a meaningful life, to feel fulfilled on a regular basis, that's not happening for a lot of people. They're feeling instead frustrated or annoyed or irritated. And of course, that's a part of life. Like, it's not wrong to feel that. You know, I was feeling some of that today.
Yep.
But if overall you can feel that what you're doing is providing a sense of fulfillment, and overall, if you can practice having and generating more positive emotions and processing and releasing the negative emotions you do have, that essentially is what then sums up a meaningful, extraordinary life.
Yes. Man, you just made me think of two things I want to say right now so I don't forget them.
Okay.
In what you're saying, in living the day-to-day and living life, I think fundamentally it's just kind of built into our spiritual DNA and our physical DNA. We just have the sense of needing to do things that matter. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's the whole thing from Viktor Frankl in Man's Search for Meaning. Mm-hmm. Like he says, most of the angst, and he kind of pointed this out too, is like so many people, perhaps most people, lack this meaning, and so they feel this sense of utter meaninglessness of their lives, right? Mm-hmm. Which is really leaning into what we're talking about. So we have to do things that matter, and we have to do them well. Because somewhere written inside of us is this sense of a need to do things well. Mm-hmm. Because you might be... So, okay, two things, like leaning into, like, are we living a good, fulfilling life? And I love what you said. You know, we might use the word happy or joyful, but it can be gratitude. It can be a sense of accomplishment, a sense of usefulness, mm-hmm. right? So if you're living... Yes, exactly. A purposeful life. So we're taking all those good emotions, good feelings around, and I think they're going to be tied into these two things essentially. Am I doing things that actually matter, and am I doing them well? Because if I'm not doing things that matter, we're going to talk more about all of this, then there's always going to be this void. That what I'm doing, like, okay, so what if I do it well? It doesn't really matter. But then the other side is I'm doing things that matter, but man, I suck at them.
Right.
And so there's still the void because you're like, I know I'm doing the right things, but man, I am not doing them well. Mm-hmm. So it just kind of
feel good.
It doesn't feel good at all. So even you're like, yeah, I'm doing the right things, but man, this is horrible because I'm horrible at it. Mm-hmm. So then you don't get the fulfilling feeling of doing the right thing. So it just clicked for me when you said that. I'm like, it's those two things. So when we break down like what is life and how do we get the good feelings most of the time. I like how you said that. We should and can feel a whole spectrum of emotions.
Even negative emotions.
Yeah, negative emotions, they're going to be part of life. And I think part of a full, good life is going to have all of that. But I like to think that the majority of the time, it ought to...
At least 80-20.
Okay, let's go 80-20. It ought to be positive.
Yeah.
We ought to like ourselves.
And positive doesn't just mean like giddy enthusiasm. It means contentment.
Except in my case.
Peace. Except in your case. Right?
I thrive on the giddy enthusiasm. They even said that last night. I went to help with my daughter's volleyball team, and she came out, and she's like, we were driving home. It was quiet for a minute, just no talking. She's like, Dad, I love you. Thanks for being a great dad. And I was like, where's this coming from? She's like, my teammates came up to me after practice, and they were like, your dad's funny. And I was like, what do you mean? He seemed so happy and so excited to be coaching us. Like most of our coaches yell at us, they're mad at us, they're just angry around doing things. He looked like he was giddy to teach us how to play volleyball. And I was like, I can't believe this is the best. Right? That's how I roll. So anyways.
Right.
But the bulk of our life should be positive emotions, which ultimately, and again, not just ultimately, we're not measuring life by the end of life moment. You look at the end, like, okay, I look back, and now I take my assessment. The assessment is going on all the time. Mm-hmm. Today's the first day of a new month, and so I'm like, boom, okay, fresh start. How did I do last month? What am I going to do this month? And it's this constant reevaluation. So how about last month? Was it mostly positive emotions? Do you feel good about yourself? Do you feel good about your life? Do you feel good about what you're doing and how well you're doing it? I get excited about this because it feels so meaningful.
I want to comment more on what you're talking about with things that matter, because I don't remember if it's in 12 Rules for Life by Jordan Peterson or just in some of his podcasts, because I've listened to 200 hours or something. But he talks about that, the universe is made of matter, but there's actually more significance to that. It's not just made of matter like as in atoms, but it's also made of what matters, because we are like designed, programmed, evolved to focus on things that matter. And so when something matters to us, it's really this clue in life of where we're supposed to be putting our attention and our focus and our time and our energy. It's really a very fascinating idea that what matters matters.
Right. Well, it's a beautiful play on words, at least in English, that, the world is made of matter, but life is made of what matters. I really like that.
Yeah.
So what is life? I know this, it may sound elementary, but if we pause to just reflect on it and kind of see it from a different angle, life is today.
Well,
and we get one day.
It's not even today. I mean, honestly, it's right now.
It's right now.
It's this moment. This is it.
And we get right now. We get the moment, and we get the day. Ultimately, then, and you've heard us say this before, we've been talking about this for years, that life ultimately is the sum total of your days. And so if you add up all your days...
and your day is the sum total of your moments.
Right. So then, it's the building... Okay, going back to the building blocks of life, right? You have quarks and then atoms and all this stuff, matter, right? And so you have these moments that make up your day, and then your day added together, that's that sum total. If you can kind of see it with your mind's eye, just lumping all of your days together, there's your life. And if we see it like that, if we see life is this moment, this day, and if you're, let's just pick frustrated, when we go out and we ask audiences, what do you feel most of the time? That's one of the most frequent answers we get, is I feel frustrated or bothered or kind of irritated. So if you spend today irritated, and that becomes a pattern, and you spend most of your days irritated, then ultimately, aren't you living an irritated life? And I want the reality of that to sink in. Because we tell ourselves these stories about our life being like a highlight reel on Instagram or something, like, oh, it was this and that and the other. But
it was that trip to Hawaii, or it was that vacation we took, or it was these special memorable moments
and highlights,
but in reality, those moments are a small percentage of your entire life.
Right. So if you take your life in a pie chart, for example, it's all the days in there. How many of those? What sliver of that pie chart would be those spectacular highlight moments? It's actually gonna be quite small. And for a lot of people we talk to, even their vacations are pretty frustrating. They may have traveled far to go on a trip, but they haven't gone anywhere away from their problems or irritations. If they fight as a family, that doesn't change on family vacation.
Right.
You still fight. And so you're like, oh yeah, remember that time? Yeah, we fought the whole time. Oh, yeah, remember this? Yeah, I was still upset about whatever, my past or how work was going. And I want this to kind of hit home. If you hate, let's say those of you who are working and you work 8 to 10, some of you work lots and lots of hours. But let's say, if you work an 8-hour day, that's roughly half of your waking hours at work. And if you hate what you do, then at least a good half of your life, you hate your life. And so day in and day out, month in and month out, and years, you're just like, oh, well, that was hateful, right? If it's a 10-year or 40-year career, I lived the life I hated. So we wanted to break this down today into this really palpable concept of saying, well, what is life then? It's how I wake up in the morning, because I wake up every day. You wake up every day. How you wake up, you're going to do that. Oh, this is cool. You're going to do that every single day of your existence. You wake up. Well, that's life right there, is how you wake up, because you do it every single day. How do you wake up? And yes, you're in charge of that. Some of you still think you're a victim to how you wake up. Some of you still think your bed has a good side and a bad side, a right side and a wrong side, right? There's no wrong side of the bed. It's how you wake up. Every morning you have a morning routine, things you do.
Whether you're aware of that or not,
exactly.
You do have one.
Some are deliberate and some are just happening. And maybe your morning routine sucks. You're rushing through it, or you're just wake up grumpy, whatever.
And so that's contributing to a suckier life.
Yeah. Or at least maybe you get up and slam a couple coffees and then your day goes better, but every morning of your life sucks. Right? I'm just trying to play this out. It's how you do, maybe you do an intentional morning routine, like the quality of the first hour of your day, or your breakfast, or how you engage. So how I greet Rachel every morning, how I greet our children every morning. And I've been very, very intentional about that since we adopted Kaya, who's our oldest. She's 19 now. Man, the first morning we had her, I was like, I am going to smile and greet my children with excitement. The first thing they see every morning with me is going to be a big smile. And
I think that's been true.
That has been true the
whole time.
Life.
I don't know they've ever missed that.
Nope. Every time they've seen me, they wake up, and maybe I'm not there immediately when they wake up, but the first time they see me every single day, they see me with a big smile, like, oh, it's a new day. And it was amazing, even as babies. Do you remember this? They would squint. Because I realized, I didn't realize they squinted. I would squint when I smile. And so then every time they saw me, they squint. I was like, why do our kids squint? And I'm like, oh.
With a big open mouth smile.
It's me. This huge open mouth smile squinting. I'm like, because that was the conditioning. Whenever they saw me from the first day we had Kaya, still till now. So that's life.
Well, so what I'm thinking in my mind here is, instead of these, what you're pointing out, instead of these big moments or these big memorable times of vacations or special activities, our life is, the majority of our life on that pie chart are those moments that are the no big deal moments.
Yep.
The waking up moments, the interactions with your spouse or kid moments, the getting breakfast moments. I mean, it's moments that are just ordinary.
And yet, they're in this context, they're a big deal. They're a huge deal because they are making up, they're the building blocks of life.
Right. And this has been a key piece, a key ingredient for us in making our life extraordinary, in that we have been very intentional about picking out all of those life moments and doing something to make them extraordinary, more than ordinary, more loving, more enthusiastic, more exciting, more purposeful, more intentional. That is how you make a great life, is you take the small moments that are happening every single day, day after day, week after week, and you find a way to make them filled with purpose.
Yes. Which I think it's important. Maybe I'm going to guess that there are quite a few people listening who maybe have never been taught that. They've never been told that we get to choose how we do those moments, how we show up. Like, we can take a moment, if you can see it with your mind, you can take a moment. Somehow, if you could grab it in your hands, you get to mold it and shape it. You
like
you
a
get
Rubik's
to shift
cube?
it. Yeah, you get a Rubik's cube, and you're like, hey, I can turn this to a different color. I can shift this. It doesn't have to be whatever's
handed to you.
Yeah, somebody hands you a moment. They hand you a moment. You know, oh crap, there goes that moment. No, you get to do something with it. You get to choose how you respond. So somebody cuts you off in traffic, you don't have to get angry. Like, they don't have power over you. So whatever the moment is, and my kids didn't always wake up happy, but I wasn't going to be like, I'm not the chameleon, right?
They're grumpy to see me. I guess I'll be grumpy
great.
too.
Now I can't smile at them and be happy today because they're not happy. I'm like, no. Like, I'm going to choose how I take this moment. And so we get to choose with each of those building blocks of moments, like you were just saying, how we make those moments count. And so we can make the moments meaningful. And we can actually take the mundane and make it magical.
Mm-hmm. And the more moments we do that with, then in that pie chart of life, the more meaningful our life is, because we've made more of the moments meaningful.
Which, man, just, I don't know if you guys can sense or feel this, or you're thinking about right now, and like just thinking about that, I don't know, it just resonates with me. I want it to be good. I want to feel good. And I don't want to have to wait. Well, okay, wait till the weekend. This weekend we'll do something good. And so the week sucks, but the weekend's okay. Or until next month. Or, man, once we go on that trip, then life will be good. And I've done that before. I totally have done that. Mm-hmm. And you just go through the motions, and you're kind of this walking zombie. You're in a walking coma until something fun can happen. Mm-hmm. Right? That's no way to live, because then the bulk of the time is blah with these few little highlights. I'm like, no, let's not do that. Let's have the vast majority of it just feel fantastic.
With a few lowlights.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. And so instead of having a blah life with a few highlights, let's have an amazing life with a few low moments, which this is life. We're going to have some low moments. So what can you do to make your moments like genuinely feel better? Not that we're faking it, or faking the emotion, but what are the things? I guess here's my question, the framework I want you to see is like, just take your day, take a normal day, because that's going to be the bulk of your days, which means it'll be the bulk of your life. Take a normal day. What are the things that you just do day in and day out? Like how are you spending these hours of your life? Because that's going to be the building blocks of your life. What can you do to make those better, so you have better feelings and better results? So how do you greet each other in the morning? When you leave for the day, what do you do? When you come back, how do you greet each other when you come back? How do you do meals? How do you do your morning routines?
What are you eating?
Yeah, what are you eating?
That makes a difference, of course.
Exactly. And
that affects how you feel. That affects your long-term health.
And so you have the food element. What are you doing with your body? How do you move? How do you carry yourself? All of us are like walking billboards. Mm-hmm.
What do you do for your soul?
Right. How are you taking care of mind, body, and spirit? Mm-hmm. What are your interactions? Like how many, this is a fun one to think through. How many interactions do you have with your family day in and day out? Because that, for many of us, that's going to be a major part of that, life pie chart, so to speak, is going to be interactions. Well, how are those interactions? Are they kind of gruff or cold or flat? Are they loving? Are they kind? Are they critical or cynical? Are they, is it transactional, or are they transformational? And think of all the interactions you have. Do you hug? Do you use words of affection? Is it scolding a lot? Sometimes you think, well, I want to be this loving and encouraging parent, for example. But when I talk to youth, a lot of them are like, yeah, my parents, they're just almost always correcting me. And so many of them feel like, how do you remember your parents? Oh, they just were constantly correcting me. This endless correction. Every time we had an interaction, it was some kind of correction. Mm-hmm. And one thing that would just kill me is if my kids just remembered their childhood with me, or their memories with me was me giving dad lectures, right? Oh, that'd be lame, right? If that's how they remember that, and that's how I spent their childhood, was giving dad lectures, that's so that the parenting section of my life would feel so off if that was the case. I want to bond. I want the relationship. I want memories and experiences.
Even, and again, back to this contrast, it doesn't, the big things are cool, the big activities are great as well, but the memories can also be made in small moments with the quiet conversations, with the listening, the acceptance, the sincere love. It doesn't have to be the big things in order to make it special. It's how you do it's doing the small things in a big way that makes it special.
Right. Now, on that note, I do have to say, and you guys will know this about us, I love big things.
Well,
and
obviously.
I want my life to be filled with big things. So, but I'm not saying this is for everybody. It's unique for us because I'm just wired for this. I love big things. So I want my life to be filled with these big, extraordinary memories and adventures. And so I make that a part of my life. It doesn't have to be a part of everyone's life, but it is a part of mine. I want my whole life scattered with epic adventures, like such memorable things. You know, some people have, you know, a life-changing experience here and there. I want to have several life-changing experiences per year.
Right.
And we've been intentional about that with our children. We wanted their childhood to look like that. Like there was just their whole childhood, because they only get one. We want our kids to look back at their childhood, and it is just peppered with life-altering, epic experiences. And it has been.
Yeah, even when we were discussing the pie chart and talking about the big experiences, you know, the 80-20 rule applies a lot. But I would think for most people, when it comes to having big, memorable experiences, it's probably maybe 10% of their life.
Or less.
Or less. Now for us, I think for sure we're pushing the 20, maybe even 30%. But the point is, even though we have been super intentional about having big, meaningful experiences, the reality of life is still most of the experiences are the ordinary ones. Even if it's sitting in an airport or driving for hours in a vehicle while you're traversing the continent, or, you know, even with all of our travels, still the majority of the time is spent in ordinary type experiences that we have to be intentional about making meaningful or purposeful.
Yep.
Because otherwise we would still suffer from the same problem.
Yep.
Even with all the big things we do, if we didn't focus on making the smaller things count or smaller things matter, our life would still be frustrating or irritating or annoying, even with all of that. And in fact, I think that we have seen that a lot in the traveling family community, of families who do go out expecting the big things to make up for all the daily small interactions that are negative. And it just doesn't work that way.
But if you take the negativity with you, it follows you like a disease.
And so they end up having an overall bad experience because the big meaningful things aren't enough to make up for the ongoing negative interactions.
Yeah, great insight. I like that metaphor of the road trip. Because even around this road trip, you're going to visit just the coolest places. And even if you make regular stops at cool places, in between, it's just hours of sitting in the car together. Right.
I mean, we drove from Georgia all the way through Mexico to Guatemala, and we had many amazing, incredible, Instagram-worthy, highlight reel experiences, but still the bulk of the time, at least maybe 80% of it, was traveling.
Just sitting in that seat for hours watching the world pass by.
Exactly.
So then, I guess circling back to the question, I hope you're thinking about this already. In fact, I would love to invite you to write about it. Get out, discuss it with your family and journal about it, write about it. If you take your day-to-day, you take the things you're doing, so it's meal prep, it's cleanup, it's running a household, it's doing work. Take those things that you do most of the time that make up the bulk of your life. How can you make them more, special? Fulfilling, meaningful?
If nothing else,
pleasant,
just
good?
More deliberate.
Deliberate? Just because, so that it feels good.
Well, and I'm using deliberate because sometimes there are things that just have to be done, and maybe they're not special, or maybe they're not like they don't feel good because maybe it's doing the dishes and it hurts your back or something. But you can still be deliberate about it. You can still find gratitude there. You know, there's a way to find some sort of meaning in what you're doing, I guess.
Well, I guess that's
even
what
if
I
it's
do.
Painful.
Let's offer some ideas of the kind of how do we
what we
refer to that stuff of like just the
strategies,
the what's the word, the grind kind of stuff, like okay, cleaning up, doing chores, running errands, the things. I mean, outsource as much as you can, if you can, when you can. But even if you have to do it, like I hate doing the dishes, so I don't do the dishes. But if I had to do the dishes,
you have done the dishes.
I have
but
done
now
the
we
dishes.
have enough older,
and they help out and they do their part, and I do my part, and we each have our part. But let's say it's something like vacuuming. I hate vacuuming too. You guys are gonna learn about all the things I hate doing. So I don't do that. But I'm trying to pick these things. I despise that.
I actually like vacuuming.
But if it was something that needed to be done, and I'm like, hey, there's no way around this. It's a good way. I got to do it. I can choose to do it grudgingly, I could be frustrated. I could be blah. I could sit there and be like, I hate this. Blah, blah, blah. Or I could be like, okay, what can I do to make this more valuable? Or
to find, I like the phrase finding the meaning in it, because ultimately, I know this is something I've done. When I look for the reason why I'm doing it, there's meaning there. Because the reality is you could just choose to not vacuum. And nobody vacuums and it never gets vacuumed. Like, that is an option, and some people do that.
That's a disgusting option.
But it's an option. And so the reality is you have to find the deeper meaning. Like, why? Why vacuum?
You're better than I am,
know.
babe. This is awesome. No, I love it. And you're right. I'm like, okay, we vacuum because we don't have a dirty house, but I still hate vacuuming. So I'm actually going to do something different. I'm going to be like, okay, I don't like vacuum. I see why I need a vacuum. I'm going to vacuum. I don't like to. But instead of just sitting there, oh, I hate vacuum, stupid vacuum, I'm doing it because it has to be done. For me, for example, my first thought was like, oh, I'm going to listen to a really awesome podcast, or I'm going to listen to audiobook. And so, yeah, I'm going around and I'm moving this machinery, whatever. I'm going to be into some really cool book. And the more I hate the chore, the better book I'm going to listen to. Right? If I have to do something, I'm like, okay, there's just no way around this. Like, sometimes we make these long drives, right? And we plan
our road
this.
Trips.
Yeah. Some of our road trips, we're like, okay, you know what? Let's just knock out 12 hours today. It's going to be a beast. I will purposely search out and purchase the best audiobooks. Ones that take me into another realm. Like, you just can't stop listening to this thing. And I remember on that road trip we were talking about, or maybe it was another one, we drove from here to Oklahoma. It was a 12 or 13 hour drive. And I listened to the entire book of Beneath a Scarlet Sky. Wow. You guys, I don't even remember the drive because the book was so riveting. And so I took something like sitting in the same seat for 13 hours and I went through a whole book.
Yeah.
And it was so special. And it totally transformed
the drudgery of the experience.
Right.
So essentially we have a couple different strategies here so far. One is try to find meaning in whatever you're doing, if it has to be done. That right there can transform it from being frustrating to being
philosophical.
Philosophical, or feeling gratitude about it, or, the other thing is to find something else to do with it that makes it more enjoyable. And then something else, which I think is still a legitimate option, is to eliminate it from your life. You don't vacuum because you don't like it. And I like it, or I'll have the kids do it who may or may not like it that much, but, it's one of their jobs and they do it.
Right. Yeah,
that's okay.
Literally rather dig a ditch. So if there's a ditch that needs to be done, I
save the ditch digging for you. I will do the vacuuming happily.
Let's make a deal, babe. You vacuum, I'll go dig that hole.
I'm okay with that.
And so, find things like that. Move your life a little bit. You have more power to structure your life than most people think they do. And it's about being strategic about it. Like, how can we shift this off? How can we move things around here? And I think you bring up such an important point. Really question everything you're doing and honestly ask, does this need to be done?
Yeah. Well, and it's amazing how, because we have been so intentional about this for so long, at least 15 years, at this point, our life is filled mostly only with the things we want to do.
Yep.
There are very few things in our life now that we have to do that we don't like doing.
And now, lest we be misunderstood here, that doesn't mean we're just like entertaining ourselves to death.
Right,
Because
that's
we're like,
not what that
I
means.
just feel like entertaining myself. I don't feel like working. I just feel like having fun here. And I think that's one of the points I really want to emphasize. Many of you have brought in, I'm going to be a bit bold here. You've brought things into your life that are not fulfilling, and I'll be bold enough to say will never be fulfilling. If you find yourself doing really trivial, meaningless things, there's not much, if anything, you can do to try to make something that's completely meaningless more meaningful.
Even if at times it's very entertaining,
right.
Entertainment does not necessarily equal meaning and fulfillment. Now, sometimes it can.
That's like me eating Twinkies and cotton candy all the time.
And calling it nutritious.
And be like, I'm just going to think nutritious thoughts. I'm going to ask God to bless it so it's good for my body. I'm going all in here. Sorry.
Doesn't work that way.
Go. It's just not going to happen. And in a very real way, if there are meaningless things in your life, there's nothing you can do to make them meaningful. They need to be eliminated.
Yeah.
Or really drastically controlled so they're just a tiny fraction of your day, which is your life.
Yeah. So back to us not doing things that we don't want to do. What that means is we're not going to a job we hate. We're doing work that we choose to do and that we enjoy doing, despite that also means there are challenging parts that have to be done, but it's the work we've chosen to do and we find meaning in it.
Yep. We're not associating with people that are toxic or draining or like we love.
We're not committed to activities or tribal events that we don't find fulfillment in.
There's no amount of social pressure that will get me and Rachel to say yes to something we find
to
completely
some committee or some
lame. Like,
meeting.
Nope, sorry, thanks.
We have no problem turning down meetings.
We really have cultivated an anti-meeting life philosophy.
Yes.
And our life is so much better because of it.
That's so true.
So look through every part of your life and do this. Really honestly evaluate it. You're not being a selfish little clod, and you're not, you're trying to be your absolute best self. This is built on a best self philosophy. So as your best self, like what's not adding value to your life? What's shallow and superficial? I love the words frivolous and frothy. It's just like foam. It's the foam on top. There's no real substance there. That, I would say, was a very first step in living an extraordinary family life. Start eliminating the froth and the frivolous, the shallow, the superficial, the things that are meaningless. That they might be fun. They might be entertaining. They might be, you play this little game or whatever, do your little thing, but is that adding value to your life? Do you feel good doing that, or afterwards you feel like a good person?
Or feel a sense of meaning or fulfillment from doing it.
Right. And just have the honesty and the courage to be like, it's not adding to my life, so it's out. So you start cleaning those out, and what's really cool is you start finding you have, all these extra...
more time.
I have more moments. I have more time. And guess what? Time is life. Moments are life. So now you might feel like you have a little bit of a vacuum or a void. You're like, I have an extra 90 minutes every day. Mm-hmm. What do I do? Well, strategically bring in things that add more value. The things that for you are filling and fulfilling, but also that across the board with like science. Like it's just been proven time and time again through research and science that we feel good about with novelty and growth and contribution and learning, like those challenge. Yes, thank you. So there are these few things that, like we just mentioned, everyone should have those in life because it has been proven time and time again, like unquestionably, that those things are meaningful and fulfilling for people. So
those things matter.
Yeah. And if you want your life to matter, then you fill those with that kind of matter, so to speak. So when you have time, you're like, okay, I need challenge. I need something that's challenging for me.
I need novelty.
And that could be anything, trying all kinds of new things. So the cool thing is when you start stacking this, you take something that's new to you, so it's novelty, it's learning and growth, and you combine it, and it's challenging. Mm-hmm. Ooh, and maybe if you're lucky, it's actually even contributing. Mm-hmm. And if you can do, something that gets 3 or 4 or 5 of those things in alignment,
like learning an instrument,
boom, or learning a language. That's what I was thinking, right?
Mm-hmm.
So in our home, you will hear the Duolingo chimes all day, every day. I'm approaching throughout the day. I'm almost 700 consecutive days. Where are you at?
I'm at about 580.
So approaching 600, and our kids are trickling down from there. Kimball's well over 400. He's probably close to 500, maybe 6, and so trickling down. Right, they're in it. We kind of set this precedence, and we're all learning a language, and then there's music being played all day long, from piano to guitar to ukulele and singing, and we're creating this space where those things that make for good feelings and a good life,
those things that matter,
are built into the life and the daily routine. So when you stop and take any kind of cross section, so to speak, of a week or a month of your life, you're like, okay, let's take this. Okay, take the last month. Okay, what's that? Well, man, language learning, and gymnastics, and volleyball, and for our kids, and stunts, and new opportunities, and new friendships.
Horseback riding. I've finished 5 books
so far this year in the first month.
Wow, way to go, babe.
Right, so I'm like, you take it like, 5 books. Wow, every book is like a meal. It makes me who I am, right? And I've been writing my book almost every day, and so I have thousands and thousands of words now into my book. That's filling. It's good, right?
It matters.
It matters.
I keep using this word because it's good.
Because it's good.
Because it matters.
So I'm sure you guys you're getting this, catching this, and I wish we were together so we could converse, and maybe even you send us messages or text us somehow, or connect with us on social media if you haven't, or however you can message us. But take stock of your life and really evaluate and dig in. What are the things, and jot these down and try to incorporate them when you kind of slip back to your default. Reevaluate and I'm going to get back to these things. Set new routines and rituals and habits and patterns to make your life matter to you, to make it count to you. Now it's going to look a little different for everybody, right? You don't have to, like, your life counting isn't by following our life pattern, but it does have some common denominators, and it does have to be something that, we're running out of the amount of vocabulary words we can use here. But it's going to matter. It's going to be meaningful and fulfilling.
Well, and like you were saying, it's going to look different for different people, because what matters to different people is different.
Yeah.
And that's on purpose, I believe.
And it's beautiful, and I think divine.
It's a beautiful thing, exactly.
And where we get into trouble, thank you for bringing that up, where we get into trouble is we follow societal shoulds and conditioning, and you may just love art, but people told you all along, you can't make money in art. Yeah. Art's that's not a career, and so you dropped art, but all along you're like, gosh, I just would love to draw. Start drawing, man.
Yeah.
Or woman.
If art matters to you, then that's what matters. You need to follow and listen to that in order to live a life that matters. Yeah.
Get clear about those kind of deep-seated desires. The things you've always dreamt about or thought you might do. Yeah, you have this attraction to certain things. Go for it.
Which, tying this back to, once you can be more intentional and start eliminating the frothy, frustrating things, you free up space to make room for the things that matter to you.
Yes.
And that's ultimately how you create an extraordinary life that's fulfilling.
Yes. So on a day-to-day, I'm doing things daily that fill me. And I was just thinking about this. I'm doing things that are contributing to bigger things. An easy example of this is, you guys know how much we love to travel. And so I'm going on a trip to Central America with my daughter. And then shortly after that, going to Europe with my sweetheart here. And then after that, have a epic adventure man camp with my guys from the masterclass and tribe. Then we have a speaking engagement, and then a big family adventure. We got all kinds of cool stuff, right? So mentally, I'm already like, I'm projecting out, and I find a lot of fulfillment thinking about, like, in expectation, right? So I get all the dopamine hits and excitement of thinking about the trip and working on the trip and preparing for the trip and doing work to prepare, so while I'm gone, it's moving forward. Like Rachel and I were just having a discussion about that. So my days are filled with these good things. And so I'm going along enjoying the process.
Exactly.
So enjoying what's happening today just in and of itself for the sake of the day, but also for the sake of how it's contributing to my growth, my contribution to the world, the work I do, helping other people, earning more money, setting big goals, working on my life list, on and on and on. And so in all sincerity, I wake up and I love my life.
And I go to bed filled with gratitude.
Bam, exactly. And so, and it's not just the bookends. It's not like I wake up excited and then I go to bed grateful and the rest of the day sucks. It's because the whole thing. I wake up excited. I spend the whole day just doing things that matter to me, and then go to bed going, yeah, that was awesome. I get to do that again tomorrow.
Yeah.
And I know, hearing that, some of you might be like, oh, you guys are so lucky. You don't have to deal with my problems. We have definitely had our fair share of problems, most of which were self-inflicted, which it's easier afterwards to realize, yeah, that was my fault. And I think a majority of problems are self-inflicted, even though it's hard to take ownership of that. And you think, no, that just happened to me. You're like, well, let's kind of look at how that came about, and you realize, okay, it was me, and I could have done so much. We had these financial problems. We got smacked by the financial downturn in 07 and 08. But looking back now, we're like, yeah, we definitely contributed to the pain we felt individually because of the national or international downturn. We wouldn't have had to experience it so much if we knew any better, but we didn't. Good lessons learned the hard way right there. But are you with me? It's not for a lack of problems, and it's not that we've just had this lucky, fortunate life handed to us, that everything's been so easy and good, and that we don't have challenges now. I often find that even when the challenges do come along, I find a lot of meaning and fulfillment in them. Yeah,
and gratitude sounds weird enough. Gratitude, because I guess I've trained myself to think of all the other problems that exist out there and all the other problems people have, and grateful that whatever has come my way is what it is, and not something different.
Not something else. Yeah. Something worse. Okay, you just made a super important point, I think. So a problem comes, kind of lands on your lap, so to speak. How you experience that and deal with it in that moment, ultimately is still up to you.
Yeah. And still can add meaning to your life.
Yes. And it doesn't necessarily have to be negative or bad.
Right.
So a challenge lands on your lap. And again, here you have the choice. It's the same choice you have with every moment. How am I going to respond? Is it possible for me to still be pleasant, even jovial, while approaching a challenge? And the answer is, of course.
And I'm going to add, maybe not jovial, because some challenges you shouldn't be jovial about. If it's something serious or related to death or something like that. But you can still find purpose, and you can still have a sense of security or confidence or strength that, again, brings meaning to it.
Yes, you're right.
Rather than just a sense of despair. Or...
You're absolutely right. Certain trials and challenges and can be really dark and painful, and the circus.
Being jovial isn't the correct response.
It's not the correct response to it. And you can feel pain and sorrow and mourning. but not, you don't have to be miserable or stay miserable necessarily.
Yeah, I think staying miserable
And,
is optional.
Yeah. So you can feel what needs to be felt. I guess my invitation here is just, and I'm sharing this because I used to be there. I used to think if something, quote, bad happens, then I have to feel bad.
For a long time.
Or if I don't feel physically well, then there's no way I can be emotionally well. And I realized that's not true. I can separate those two things.
Mm-hmm.
I can be in physical pain and emotionally pleasant.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I can be struggling with something financially, but still be mentally here, present.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Anyways, I hope you guys are catching all this. That your life is made up of your moments, and you can make your moments magical and meaningful. And hopefully there's some strategies to make that work. But just kind of go through and be like, and choose. You get to decide what you want to feel, decide what you want your life to be like, and then be that, regardless of what comes along. Mm-hmm. So if you decide to be a joyful, enthusiastic person or a calm person, whatever it is you want to be, like, and just write it out. You guys, we get to author our life. So I have chosen, I want to be an enthusiastic, energetic, inspiring person. That's the kind of life I want to live. Mm-hmm. So then I choose that. I decide to do that. And whatever comes along, that's my response. I've created my framework for a response. I'm like, oh, here's a challenge.
Here's a chance to practice enthusiasm,
exactly.
Joy, and what was the other one?
I don't remember.
Oh.
But yeah, I love how you said that. Here's a chance to practice it.
Right.
Instead of, oh man, I was going to live that kind of life, but now I have to toss it out and I get to be miserable and live a sad life, right? That's just not the case. So I love this. There it is. There's a simple framework on a day-to-day, moment-to-moment way to live an extraordinary family life. Mm-hmm. Love it. So, dear listener, do that.
All of it.
Just hit it. Starting right now. Ready, set, go. No, do it. And if you have questions about it, shoot us a question. And we'd love to hear from you. So again, connect with us on social. You can ask questions there as well. You can email us.
Craig.Denning on Instagram. World School Family on Instagram.
And then we have YouTube channels, so you can go and you can ask comments there, questions. You can go to our websites, extraordinaryfamilylife.com and gregdenny.com. You can join our family coaching, Extraordinary Family Life Coaching Program, or you can join the Be the Man Masterclass and Tribe and come on those epic man camp trips with me. Right there, we've created all these resources to help you live those extraordinary lives. And if you've heard something you like this, you can go leave a rating. Go leave a rating on the podcast. Take a picture of it. Share it with people. Pass this around. Like, be a part of this. For us, this is a mission. You know why it's so important to me? It's because I lived on the other side, and you did too. You guys, before we met each other, we had both experienced some pretty miserable moments of existence. Mm-hmm. In our teens, we both experienced some pretty rotten, do I dare say, years? Right?
Yeah.
Right? Whereas like, whoa! And we've been on the other side. And then as we learn to move through this and get on the other side, like, whoa, wait a minute. This is amazing. We have to share it. So that's why we're passionate about this.
Well, and not just our teens, but we had some difficult times when we were newly married too. I mean, it's not that it's just been uphill since our teens, but there have been challenges along the way where we felt like victims to life, and we felt that things were out of our control, and we couldn't do anything to make it different or better. And we have come a long way and do live an extraordinary life now, but it's not because we're lucky or it just happened by accident. It's been created intentionally.
Yes. So now, when the challenges came back then, we'd be like, oh, this sucks. And we'd like slump into this dark pit. Mm-hmm. and I remember feeling hopeless. And I know you did too.
Oh, yeah.
There was this hopelessness. But now challenges come along, and it still hits, it still hurts.
Yeah, it's still challenging.
Some
That's
of
the
them
definition.
catch you upside the head.
That's the definition of a challenge, is that
It's not easy.
challenging.
No, we have easy challenges. No, there's no such thing, right? That's an oxymoron. Like, but we figured out how to roll with it in a good way, and life is so good. And so, having experienced both sides and having traveled so extensively and seeing and working with people, we get to work with people every day. It's so awesome. And seeing all these facets and ways of life, like, this is our mission, man. To say that it's possible. If we can do it, anyone can do it. So join us in this like mission of sharing this message, and let's all live a genuinely extraordinary family life. Okay, love you guys. Reach up.
Hey, if you're still there, thank you so much for listening. There are hundreds of thousands of podcasts out there, and you've chosen to listen to ours, so thank you for that. If you found value in it, please leave us a review on Apple Podcasts or your favorite podcast player. If you're ready to take the next step in leveling up your family life, go to extraordinaryfamilylife.com, where you can find our courses and our coaching in parenting, marriage, and education. And don't forget that Greg has his Be the Man Masterclass at gregdenning.com.